Hi everyone, welcome to FortiGate. Now today we are going to take up another topic from the FortiGate Administration Guides FortiOS 7.4.4. The last video was about the dashboards. Okay, we talked about the dashboards, the monitors, what to look, where to look, and how to derive information. Now today we are going to talk about network interfaces. Okay, in network you will have a lot of options. I mean, your whole entire infrastructure is basically on this particular tab. All right, there are so many options, so many features, so many functionalities which you can work on the network. So we will go into each one of them, and then we'll understand why that particular network interface option is being used. For example, VLAN or aggregate or something else, right? So let's take up one by one and let's see what each of them is being used for. Okay. So we are on to the network page. Okay. Now over here, we will see that you have a lot of options which you can do on a FortiGate network interface. You have DNS, SD-WAN, DHCP, so many things, right? So the first thing or the first topic is interfaces, right? In the interfaces, you start with the physical type, and then you have many more, VLAN and aggregate and a lot more. So we'll talk about all those things. But let's, first of all, we'll take up one of the firewalls over here, and I'll start with that, so it becomes easy for you to go through. Now, we have a FortiGate 1801F. All right, we have gone into the network menu. Okay, so if you just just have a look into the left side corner, you will have a lot of options and menus over here. Now, in this particular section, what you find is that under the network, if you click on this, you'll have a lot of other options: interfaces, DNS servers, IPAM, explicit proxy, SD-WAN, static routes, and so many more. We'll take one of them, and whichever is being used the most, we'll explain that. Okay. First is interfaces, of course. We'll have a list of all the interfaces over here. And what do we use those for, and how do we look into each one of them? Let's try. Now, first is that, see, we are in the demo website. Okay, it's a 40 demo. You can all go into 40demo.com, and you can also have a quick look into all these, a full functioning FortiGate firewall. In the network page, you will see a physical interface. You will see an aggregate interfaces, right? You will see this, the physical interface. Then we have a software switch. We have a tunnel interface as well. Okay, so as of now, in this particular FortiGate firewall, there are these four types of interfaces which are somehow being used somewhere. Now, look at the admin guide. The first thing is the physical. What does it say? A physical interface can be connected to either an Ethernet or an optical cable. Depending on the FortiGate model, there is a varying number of Ethernet or optical physical interfaces, right? Now, in the section of network, we can see the physical interfaces. And you can see port 16, you have port 1, 2, HA1, 2, MGMT1, 2. Now, question in general, whoever is learning FortiGate firewall, who is just about to start the FortiGate firewall, it comes naturally that if you have management 1 and 2, okay, why are they being used for? And if the ports, we can see that port 2, 4, 50 or 40, what are they being used for? If you go on to the top section, right, you click on this MGMT1, it will automatically give you a sub menu. And in this sub menu, you will see information about that MGMT1. Right now, it is down. The link is down. So what do you mean by link is down? Link down means physically that interface is down. Okay. Port speed, it says auto negotiation. That means depending on the cable that you would have or to the other device that you connect to, it will automatically negotiate the speed. Okay. The type is physical interface. It's not a virtual one. It's physically available. You can see it on the device itself. The role configured for this is called as LAN. The IP address configured for this is 192.168.1.99, which, by the way, is also the default IP address of any FortiGate models, whichever model that you have. If you look into the MGMT1 interface, whether it is connected or not, by or I should say by default, you have 192.168.1.99. So if in case you want to, you just bought a new FortiGate firewall, you have racked it up, and you want to connect to the GUI, you can just connect to the MGMT1 interface and get this IP address. Log into this on the web GUI. Next is MGMT2. So higher end models or 1000 series and above models basically comes with two management interfaces. All right. We have HA, which is high availability, HA1 and HA2. These are 10 Gbps full duplex connections. Now, again, depending on what model you have, you could either have just one HA cable, you could either have two HA cables. Now, the best recommendations for the FortiGate to be configured in HA is to have two HA cables. But if in case you have a lower end model, you might just have one. Okay. Then you can see that from port 1 and above, right? It is said HA and then it is said port 1. Now this is configured like that. Okay. This is configured like this. We click on view. Now all 40 demo websites, they won't let you make any changes. So it's just a read-only access that you will get. That's fine enough for you just to have a quick look into the configurations. Okay. Look over here. In the alias section, right? In the alias section, you can see that this is being configured to be called as the HA. There you go. Which is why it is mentioned over here and then the port. So it is always alias and then the physical port. Okay, so it will mention the port number and the alias will always precede it. Okay, and hence the reason why is it called like that. Yeah. Next, it will of course tell you the type, which is physical one. VRF ID. Now again, VRF, if in case you do have VRF, it will show up over here. If you want to create VRFs, you can mention the number or the ID that you want to use for it. Now, the next thing that you will see over here is basically the role. Okay. Now, in the role section, you would you could basically understand that whether you want to create the interface for a WAN kind of a role, or the interface is being used for internal users, so a LAN basically, or it could be for DMZ as well, which is where you have public servers, or as of now, you're not really sure of where would it go. So in that case, you can, remove all those information as well. Now, how do we do that? So you have LAN, you have WAN, you have DMZ, and then undefined. So undefined, and again, basically goes to the point where if you're not sure, DMZ for public servers, WAN if it is a interface which is publicly facing, LAN if in case it is a internal segmentation firewall. Okay, next, addressing mode. You would basically get all the information. We'll get into this a little later. Right now, we are more about the types of the interfaces that we have. So this, again, when you see HA port 1, HA is the alias that you see, right? Right. So now let's go about checking the other options as well. Now over here, you would see that after the physical interfaces, you have something which is called as a VLAN. Now, VLAN, we all know what is a VLAN, which is a virtual local area network. But let's try to understand that when it comes to the FortiGate firewall, how do we deal with it? Okay. Let's see, do we have any interfaces which do have a VLAN in it? And yeah, there we go. I wanted to show you one thing more. Yeah, I think let's take this one. Okay. See, in the aggregate, you can also create a virtual. So a virtual interface or a virtual LAN interface, when you configure this onto your FortiGate firewall, you can map it to a physical interface. You could also map it to aggregate interface. In our case right now, if you look into this particular section, it says FSWAGG40 link. So if you click on view over here, now, fortunately, you can see this particular aggregate just have one interfaces. Okay, I mean, you can have 2, 3, 4, depending on what your customer requirement is. But an aggregate is nothing but a combination of more than one interface, which is being used as one logical interface. That is what an aggregate is all about. In Cisco terminology, we call that as PAGP.
In open standard technology, we are calling it as LACP. Okay, so BGP is port aggregation protocol, and LACP is a link aggregation protocol. So same thing. This is Cisco proprietary, and this is open standard. So everybody is able to use the LACP now. Now the next thing is that over here, what I wanted to showcase you is the VLAN information, right? So as I said, you can either map your VLAN with a physical interface. You could also map it to a virtual interface. All right. So I'll take this one and I'll showcase you how that's done basically onto the FortiGate firewall. So when you do create, let's say you create a new and then you come click on the VLAN interface ID, it will give you these many information. Okay. It will ask you that, okay, what is the VLAN ID that you want this particular virtual interface? So what you have to basically assign a virtual interface ID or a VLAN ID, which should be used. And that VLAN ID should be somewhere maybe in your L3 switch or maybe your upstream device, somewhere that VLAN ID has to be there, right? Because firewall will now start tagging the information. Okay. So VLAN information that when you see, this means that firewall will now tag this information whenever the traffic is going out. Next thing which you have to understand is that in this particular section, you can see that you have the alias and the alias is set to DCFW. Okay. Now, this DCFW corresponds to this one. And this DCFW corresponds to the name of the interface of the virtual interface when this was being created. So when you click on create new interface and you click on virtual interface, then it asks for the name. So in this demo firewall, the name was given DCFW and the alias was also given basically the same thing. So which is why you see DCFW 3 times. Okay. But as I said, alias will always precedes the name of the interface. Okay, so it's alias and then the name. All right. Next thing. It will tell you that which interface, sorry, this which interface you are mapping the device to. Again, every virtual interface has to have some kind of physical interface tagging. Okay, what I mean is a virtual interface cannot independently exist. That is why it has to be mapped to some physical interface. A loopback interface can exist. Okay, so don't get confused over here. A loopback interface can exist independently. You don't need to map this to a physical interface, but a virtual interface has to have some kind of a physical mapping because it has to tag the information. That is why. Okay. VRF, you can also do more level of segregation inside the VLAN. So let's say, for example, in this VLAN 2, we have a segment of 10.0.0.0 and let's say /24, and we have another 10.0.0.0/16. They will not exist in the same VLAN. Okay, so what you can do is you can have a VLAN 2 with a VRF 10, which will have this /24, and then you have a VRF 20, which will have this one. Okay, so I don't want to get this into complications, but point is VRF and VLAN, if you make a combination of both of them, this means that your network is complex. Okay, that requires a good level of designing before you even start to configure something like that. You cannot just go about using, okay, I'll use VRF now or I'll use VLAN. No, VLAN ID you can still, you have a free hand with a VLAN ID at certain level. Okay, but with VRF you cannot. You really have to design each and everything to the core before you even can start using it. Color, again, you can define what color of the interface that you want. This is just for like, what do you say, better presentation, better management. Just by looking into the color, you will know what and understand what the interface is all about. For example, if you're giving green interfaces, let's say, for example, all the LAN sections or the user sections, you have a blue section for all the VIPs. So let's say you have an orange section for all the DMZ zones, a red section for all the WAN interfaces, right? So in that case, you can go ahead and manage your devices, manage your interfaces in that manner as well. Then comes the address section. In the address section, you will have information about that. How do you want to configure the IP address onto this? Manual basically means that we will manually enter the IP address information. IPAN is a very different topic, which we'll cover up a little later, because this is something which has not been used on a daily basis. Okay. We'll cover this up. In case you guys need to, you want to know more about the IPAN, just comment down below. I'll probably create a video on this as well. Then we have the DHCP. Okay, if in case you have a DHCP server in your environment and you want that this particular interface should get an IP address from that particular DHCP server, just click on DHCP. PPOE, again, you have a WAN interface like a, ADSL link, something like that. Then you can give the PPOE as well. Okay, but to be honest, whenever you go above 1,000 cities or 2,000 cities, in 90% of the situations, you won't be using PPOE. PPOE is for people like in startup environment or SMB kind of an environment, a small environment with maybe 50 people or 20 people, something like that. So PPOE is in general used over there. I'm not saying that this is the only case. I'm just saying that in generally, these are the cases where you will use PPOE the most. Next is the IP section. So if in case you have selected manual, it will give you the IP address section in the box. Same goes for the IPv6 as well. You have the manual option, the DHCP, and the delegate. IP address information, IPv6 information. What it does is that if you want to configure the IPv6 automatically, you can do that as well. In generally, we don't do that, but there's an option. Then create address objects matching subnet. This option basically what it does is on the basis of whatever the name that you have given, okay, it will create an address object with the IP address information that you have. Okay, it will create an address object with this particular IP address to the subnet. Okay, so IP address is given as 254, but here you will see the subnet, the entire subnet. Now you can use this subnet in a firewall once, if in case required. Right? So if that is the case in your project, go ahead, enable this option. If in case not, then go ahead and remove it, no worries. Scroll down, and now we have the administrative access. So administrative access is where you have access about the IPv4 and what kind of services you want. Okay. For example, when I say HTTPS, that means on this particular interface, if I type in the IP address on my web GUI or in other ways, if I open up my web browser, enter this IP address and hit enter, I would get the HTTP access of that interface if I do have access. Okay. HTTP, if enabled, I'll get port 80 access to it. Ping, in most of the cases, I'll ask everybody to enable this option for the network connectivity test, just to make sure that the connectivity is there for that particular interface or not. At least when till your project is not at the deployment stage. If you have passed, if your deployment is completed, then you do have an option that you can either disable this option if you don't want any kind of a ping or ICMP or tracer on this particular interface, or let's say your VAPT team does not want you to do this, go about and disable this option. But you're still at the project or deployment stage, make sure that this field is enabled. This will help you in your network level connectivity test and to ensure whether you have the reachability into it. Okay. FMG access, if in case you want that this interface to be used to connect to the FMG, and more importantly, whether you want this interface to be used for a management purpose for the manager to communicate to communicate with this particular FortiGate firewall and get the device added on to your FortiGate manager, go about enabling this option as well. SSH, pretty simple and straightforward. If you want to take a Forti session or the SSH section of this interface, you take that. SNMP, again, you want the interface information like port up, down, bandwidth, network monitoring, all these things, enable the SNMP. Security fabric, absolutely brilliant feature set. The security fabric is very, very good option if you have a FortiGate firewall. Let's say if you have more than 10, 20, 50 firewalls, and you want to have a page where you have all the firewalls in one place in all the different locations, and you just want to have a quick look into what firewall is doing what. Is it working, not working, connecting, not connecting, issues, no issues, whatever. Security fabric will give that information to you. Radius accounting, again, if you want to have that kind of radius accounting in place as well. And FTM is Forti telemetry. FortiTelemetry is basically used with the FortiClient software where you want to have information about what kind of patches and updates is being pushed over to that particular system. Then we have the speed test. This was recently introduced. This is to ensure that what kind of speed are you getting on that particular interface. We used to have iPerf. I mean, not we used to. We still have iPerf with the FortiGate firewall, which where you can do this speed test, but you have this option as well. Same goes for the IPv6 as well. Next. Now we are coming to the DHCP server. Absolutely, you can have an interface where you want that interface to act as either a DHCP server or as a DHCP relay. What does a DHCP relay do? Comment down below. What does a DHCP relay do and what is a DHCP server? And interview question, can a DHCP server also act as a relay, or can a DHCP relay act as a DHCP server? If yes, why? Go ahead, comment down below. Let's see how many of you know the networking protocols. Back in my days of TAC, we used to really have fun with these kind of discussions. So let's see how many of you know about it. Okay, moving on. So if in case you have the mode of DHCP server as a relay, that means you have to have a type, okay, and then you have to have a server IP address. As in, if I'm relaying the information of the DHCP clients, I need to know that where is my DHCP server. Okay, so IP address of the DHCP server, and this is the backup of the DHCP server. Right. Now you can over here see that this is type is called as regular and this is called as an IPsec. So if in case you want the DHCP or the DORA process to happen inside a VPN tunnel, then you need to select the IPsec option. If in case it's regular, just use the physical interface or the virtual interface, then use the regular one. Next is stateless address auto configuration. One of the very brilliant options over here, but we will take this up a little later. It's quite a big one. So again, if you want this to be discussed, comment down below, we'll do that as well. Same options for the DHCP V6. Then have the next option, which is called as network. What does this mean? See, in the network tab, you would basically have information about what kind of information or extra information that you want from this interfaces. In this virtual interface, I want the device detection to be on. What does this basically mean? Is that because this is my MAC address, I will try to identify the devices which is coming to this particular interface by understanding what MAC address they are coming with. We all know that the first 6 values of the MAC identifies the OEM of the product that you're using. So Cisco have a specific OID values. Palo Alto has a specific OID value. Fortinet has a OID value. So whatever devices or even Windows machines have OID values, or Mac machines or Linux machines will have their OID values. So the device detection, what it does is, as soon as any traffic which comes to this interface, it is going to learn what kind of MAC address is coming, and on the basis of the first 6 values of the OID, it is going to identify whether it is a Windows machine, Linux machine, Mac machine, or Cisco or whatever. And then the same information you will be able to find in the log. When you check the log, the forward traffic, over there you will see a section of the device, and in that you will see the MAC addresses. You will see the devices which is being identified. Okay, so if that is something which you really want, then you enable this option. But if you have an L2 switch below, then this would work. If you have an L3 switch, then you just see the MAC address of the L3 switch and you won't get anything else. I mean, you will see a list of maybe 100 IPs, but all the MAC addresses are just one. Or all of them have the same MAC address for that. But if in case you have an L2 connected to the FortiGate firewall, then yes, all those devices will have their individual MAC addresses, and you will have a list of all the devices, MAC addresses, information, and the IP address information, all those things will have. So if in case you have an L2, enable the device detection. If in case you don't have it, then disable the device detection. It won't help you out if it is an L3 switch. Automatically authorized devices. If in case you're using the security fabric in place, you use this option to authorize devices. When we go into the security fabric, we'll talk about this in greater detail. IGMP snooping, if in case you want to enable that option. DSAP snooping, again, security option if you want to enable that. Intra VLAN traffic, if you want to block that kind by default, you can enable this option. If you want to have intra VLAN traffic, then enable this option. Otherwise, block it out. Intra VLAN traffic will only come to you if you are acting as a what do you say, when you are coming in the middle. If not, then this won't make any help to you. Security mode. Security mode basically means that you want to enable captive portal. If you want to enable the captive portal, then this option will be enabled. As soon as you enable this option, your captive portal will be enabled. And you will see a lot of other options. Traffic shaping. We'll talk about this. I mean, we do have a traffic shaping separate option of traffic shaping. So in the category of the 40 admin guide. So in the 40 admin guide, when we will take the traffic shaping topic, we'll discuss in detail about what all these options are. But in short, just to understand what kind of bandwidth you have, or if you want to restrict your bandwidth, or you want to give a specific amount of bandwidth to the interface, then you use the traffic shaping. Miscellaneous. This is about the comment section. I highly recommend to use the comment section as and when required, because if you are in a higher production or a higher deployment where you have multiple levels of firewalls and multiple levels of interfaces to be used, comment really helps you understand that which interface is being used, what's the reason or the role of that. So make sure you use it. Enabling and disabling the interface depends on where you are at the stage of the production deployment. If in case you're doing it as you speak or as you work, enable it up. If in case you're just doing the configuration for, let's say, some kind of a deployment which is coming up in the next week or maybe on the weekend or maybe after some time, you can configure all these options, keep the interface disabled so it won't affect the entire network, but till the configuration will be placed. So once the deployment window is open, you can go about enable the option and then you go. So it's just about managing the configurations of the device in a way where it helps you, do your task much more efficiently. All right, so that is about the interface section. Or I would say only the VLAN section. We have so many more interface types to work with. All right, so let's see. The next is the aggregate. Okay, we just talked about the aggregate one. But we'll talk about the aggregate, but in more levels of detail. Okay, this particular option does not really help my case. So what I want is a comment down below a lag situation or a scenario which you want me to discuss, or something specific to the lag that you want me to discuss on. Okay. When we go on the next video, we'll specifically take up the lag series. Okay. In the lag series, we'll talk about multiple levels of issues or problems that comes. So all your topics or all your questions that you put in right now in the comment section, I'll take those up in the lag video series. Okay. All right. Till that time, I'll see you around.